Weeks after the Congolese government reached a ceasefire with the M23 rebels, a breakdown in agreement has led to the return of the dreaded group. M23 rebels, one of the Democratic Republic of Congo's greatest security challenges, attacked the military and has returned as it claimed that the Congolese government had failed to honor its part of the ceasefire agreement. There are more details of this for you in this package.
Weeks after the Congolese government reached a ceasefire with the M23 rebels, a breakdown in agreement has led to the return of the dreaded group. M23 rebels, one of Democratic Republic of Congo's greatest security challenges, attacked the military on its return as it claimed that the Congolese government had failed to honor its part of the ceasefire agreement. In eastern DR Congo, which has become a threat of war, the Tutsi-led M23 rebels have captured a great expanse of the country's eastern territory. The rebels have displaced more than 500,000 people, and with return hostilities, more may be at the threat of being forced out of their homes. On Wednesday, the rebel group targeted the Kiroche and Shasha settlements as Congolese soldiers were reported to vacate their posts. Rwanda also stays in the picture as the Congolese government continues to push the narrative of its neighbors' involvement in its security ordeal. The latest ceasefire breakdown is one of many agreements that has failed to yield enduring positive results. Eastern DR Congo remains a hot spot as M23 rebels keep striking.
Now, joining me on the program today for analysis of this, I have Nixon Katembo, security analyst for the Great Lakes in Eastern Africa. He joins us from Johannesburg in South Africa. And I also have joining us activist and political analyst Gideon Beleke. He joins us from Toronto, Canada. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining me on the program. Now, I'd like to start with Nixon Katembo in Johannesburg. What is the current status of the M23 rebel group in the Eastern DRC, and what territories have they recently gained control of?
I think to begin with, the M23 have been declared by the Congolese government as a terrorist organization, and we can only go by the declaration of the government. Whereas, on the other hand, we know for the fact that there have been numerous reports from the United Nations of Rwanda's involvement with that particular group. The territory that they control currently is the territory within the North Kivu province, in the territory of Walikale, part of it, and then part of the Ruchuru territory as well. Which is almost 1/3 of much of the entire North Kivu province, if one look at the geographical composition of that region, because it has about 44 territory of 5. You have Walikale, Ruchuru, Lubero, and Beni. So those are the main territory, but it has not really controlled much of the province, which is still under the control of government. Although, if you see what the M23 is pushing for areas that are the richest in that particular province.
Namely, in terms of mineral, when you say
mineral resources,
okay,
where coltan is mined, where gold is mined, so it gives you a picture of what is going on here. Because as is fight, so does the exploitation of natural resources of the DRC get looted by evading forces, in this case the M23 supported by Rwanda.
Now, Nixon, before I move to Gideon, I just want to know the strategic objectives of M23 rebels. You said they're moving to mineral-rich areas where they're looted. Do you believe, how close are they to the provincial capital, Goma? And do you feel reaching Goma might be one of their strategic military objectives?
Well, reaching Goma is one of the strategic objectives, and quite frankly, Goma is under siege by the M23 because they are less than 30 kilometers away from Goma. If you look at Kibumba, you look at the areas such as Sake, Kiloriru, where they are, and all those areas, they are just a few kilometers away from the provincial capital of Goma. But one caveat to that, which is holding them not to attack the city of Goma, is the international condemnation that might come with the attack on Goma, because many of the international organizations, including UN bases, are in Goma, as well as the city is highly populated. They talk about 1 to 2 million citizens residing in the capital, provincial capital of Goma. So those are the key issues, because you would recall that in 2013, when they took over Goma, there was a flurry of international condemnation, which then forced the M23 to withdraw from Goma and eventually being pursued by Force Intervention Brigade of the United Nations in conjunction with the DRC Army. So if you speak militarily, Goma is really under siege, and Goma can be attacked in a matter of time. It's just a decision on a strategic level whether to attack Goma or not on the part of the M23. And remember, Goma is subjected to all economic activities that are getting from Rwanda, because the M23 have cut the major supply routes to the city from Sake to via Kiwanja, then from Sake to from Goma to Sake, going to other regions of the province, and then from Kibumba going towards the Rutshuru area via Rumangabo, and going towards the areas such as the North, the Lubero and the Beni territories.
Okay, thank you for providing that background. Next, I'd like to bring in Gideon in Toronto. Gideon, we've had a series of ceasefires between the M23, the African Union, different mediators, and people are always hopeful that finally this senseless fighting will come to an end. On Tuesday, there was a recently broke out ceasefire by Angola, and on that same Tuesday, this ceasefire agreement was meant to take effect. Fighting broke out again between the M23 forces and the Congolese army. Why did this truce and this ceasefire agreement fail to take effect?
First and foremost, the M23 did not agree with the accords that was signed, and they used the time that was given to them within the agreement of Nairobi. They use it strategically in order to advance militarily on the ground. So they didn't comply on the ceasefire agreement because they've never intended to do so. They don't have that intention, but they end up signing it because they just wanted
exactly. That was what I was going to ask. Like they didn't sign on the duress. Two parties, for you to have an agreement, two parties need to sign a document, and the M23 did sign this document. So why did they do it?
They signed the document as a formal way of dealing with the issue, but the intention was not to do the ceasefire. They had another strategy that is working pretty well. The East African regional forces came to the DRC as a force that is coming to fight the M23, but they ended up creating these buffer zones, and the buffer zones are the territories that are being captured right now by the M23. In other words, the EAC is favoring the strategic the strategic military operations of the M23, and that is definitely wrong because we can now see what the EAC is doing and how the EAC is somehow supporting the the coalition RDF and M23.
Thank you very much, Gideon. And now back to you, Nixon. The M23 group has claimed that the DRC government has failed to honor its pledge to integrate them into the army. Can you explain the history of this pledge and the reasons behind M23's grievances and aggression?
Really, I think we need to be clear that the M23 is not a group that have been denied access to the DRC institution of the state, including government. There have been numerous accord with the predecessor of the M23. Recall that the DRC got invaded by Rwanda and Uganda in 1996 under the pretext that they were assisting Kabila to get rid of Mobutu. And this at the time when the geopolitics of the continent was changing after the fall of the Berlin Conference. So you understand that there is an international geopolitical dynamics that come to play in that war of 1996 that led to Mobutu and installing Laurent Kabila. However, when Laurent Kabila turned against the Ugandan and the Rwandans, they then went and formed a new rebellion called the RCD. From the RCD, we look at it, they eventually again turned into the CNDP and the CNDP to the current M23 that we see today. So what is happening in the DRC is not something new. It has been there since 1996. And these are issues that have been ventilated in many peace accords that have been signed with the DRC government. To the extent that the M23 were allowed to form a political party, to integrate in the national army, as well as having representation in Congolese parliament. Their predecessors, such as Moise Nyarugabo, who is in the Senate currently, the likes of Azarias Ruberwa, all of these are part and parcel of the previous M23. So when you hear the claim that some of the agreements have not been honored, that's not true. In fact, it's an ill intentions on the part of the M23 by peddling this lie that they have not been fully integrated in the Congolese National Army. In fact, for your information, there are more than about 1,853 officers, high-ranking officers, issuing from different rebellions, coming from this Tutsi-led so-called rebellions supported by Rwanda. So the current call for them to reintegrate in the Congolese National Army is what have been rejected by the Congolese government by saying, what haven't we done before in the previous signed agreement that you are claiming now to do? Hence, you see the Congolese government sticking to its point. They're saying, if you want to lay down your arms, what you have to do now is to demobilize, reintegrate in the civilian life. And that is the sticking point at the moment, because the Congolese government is well aware that within those so-called M23 rebels, there are Congolese, Rwandan defense forces, which then reintegrate and get to be infiltrated in the Congolese political life, as well as the Congolese security apparatus. And this is what is being opposed by the Congolese government and the broader Congolese society.
So I guess it's a case of one bitten, twice shy. The door has been firmly shut against any chance of M23 rebels being reintegrated in the Congolese army. Now, Gideon, how is the Congolese government responding to the advance of M23 rebels and the newly deployed East African regional forces faring in the DRC? Their mission is to mount operations against M23 armed groups if the rebels do not withdraw from occupied territories. They haven't done that. They haven't laid down their arms and cease attacks, and they haven't done that also. So as this East African intervention force, this EAC troops currently in the DRC, have they made any significant difference in the fight against M23 rebels? Because I was looking at their official Twitter page a few days ago, and they were commissioning boreholes and those sorts of things. What's your take on that?
EAC troops has never done anything in the DRC. They are not performing correctly, and it's really unfortunate. You know, you've mentioned that they are building boreholes. That's not the mission they have in the DRC. They came with a mandate to help us to restore peace in the DRC, but we are spending billions of millions of dollars, and they are not giving us security, the security we wanted. Most of those soldiers are now having joyful moment in Goma, alcohol and so on, instead of being on the front lines. They have never shot any single bullet since they came to the DRC, while we are spreading, we are spending millions of dollars on the operations they are not conducting. They created buffer zones as a way to protect civilians, but today the M23 are still displacing thousands and thousands of civilians every single day. And all these buffer zones that were created by the EAC are now controlled somehow by the M23 rebels. We are really skeptical, and we don't really understand the strategy that is being used by the EAC troops in the Eastern DRC, if they are pro-RDF, because we should actually stop talking about the M23 as a rebel group. There is nothing as a rebel group. It's an external aggression by the Rwandese forces. It's an external aggression from Kigali, and they are just using the M23 as a context. So it's a proxy war they are doing on the DRC, and that is totally unacceptable.
Now, staying with you, Gideon, I need to understand this EAC's mandate, because it wasn't just a unilateral decision by Kenya or Congolese government. They all sat together and saw the danger of M23 rebels. That's why they decided to send them in with a mandate, a clear mandate, like you need to deal with this M23 rebels. I've seen protests in Goma and different parts of DRC with people saying M23 dégage, the same way they were asking MONUSCO to go out. What might be the problem? What could be hindering the EAC troops from carrying out their mandate? Or is it too early in the mission for us to start judging their success or otherwise?
You know, all these are the result of the miscalculation of Kinshasa's diplomacy. During their first press conference, the EAC troops, they mentioned it clearly. They are not coming to DRC to restore peace. They are coming to DRC to assist us technically. They didn't come as an intervention mission, but still we have a government that is behaving without a proper responsibility, and they ended up putting us in all this. So the Congolese citizens are caught in a power game between our government, the protagonist forces, and other external forces and external entities that have entered in all this conflict. And we even have international actors. Like if you ask the United States, why would they answer? They will ask you to go to the regional forces. They will say they are supporting the Angola and Nairobi Accord. So the Congolese people are not being helped. The situation is not improving. We still have thousands of people who are displaced as we speak now. Thousands and thousands of people are being displaced from their home, and we are tired. We can't continue being caught under this game of power by certain individuals who are actually working for their self-interest. And we've seen actually this narrative created by this terrorist organization, M23, that is using some ethnic groups in the DRC as an instrument. They are lying even to the people that they are defending them. They don't defend those people. What they are doing is to advance their own agenda. It's just a power position thing. They want to control natural resources. They want to have positions of power, and they want to be in a situation where they can clash the government or they can join the government. Like my co-debater mentioned here, these are the same people who started all these rebellions since 1996. 1996. So we are caught in a vicious cycle, and we have to recognize it. We have to recognize it and take appropriate action so that we can end all this. And the Congolese government, we appeal upon the Congolese government to listen to the citizens. The civil society has provided great recommendations that can help the country to move forward, but we don't know the diplomatic strategy that is being used by Kinshasa. The diplomatic strategy that is being used by the Tshisekedi's regime has failed, and it's condemning us into a perpetual systematic conflict. And that is unnecessary, and we cannot continue supporting such kind of strategies that have failed and are failing to protect our citizens.
Thank you, Gideon. I mean, Nixon, you did hear the passion which Gideon spoke, and I'm sure he's speaking for millions of Congolese, and they share the same sentiments, because it seems like a hopeless situation. They talk about African solutions to African problems. So you've gone to your regional economic community and body to find solutions, and they don't seem to make much of a difference. And if you look at the international community, it's neither here nor there. And that brings me, because Gideon also mentioned the role of international actors, that brings me to my question, Nixon. How are international actors such as the United Nations and Western governments responding to this crisis? And what kind of support are they providing to the DRC's government and local communities? Because United Nations papers have come out to say, look, Kigali is supporting with hard evidence. Even France and Western governments have said, look, we have evidence that Kigali is backing M23 rebels. So why are they not helping the government of the DRC deal with this problem?
Let me begin by mentioning, as a prelude to my answer to your questions, that the Western countries have mastered what I call a diplomacy of double speak. To contextualize my answer is that you look at the history of support by the Western government to the current mayhem in the DRC, namely by Rwanda and Uganda at the beginning, since 1996. Those forces that were supported to invade Rwanda in 1990 were trained in Uganda. Paul Kagame, having been a chief of intelligence in Uganda, the likes of the late Fred Rugema having been internal security minister in Uganda, are the same people who came to top of the government in Rwanda, and eventually, when the genocide happened in Rwanda, they're the very same people who organized a new rebellion to invade the Congo. So you have to understand the context of this. So when you hear the Western, we're talking about the Western involvement in the Great Lakes region at large, you have to look at who is supporting Rwanda, who is supporting Uganda. Both militaries have been trained in the United States. Many of them have been trained either in Israel, and many of them at Sandhurst in the United Kingdom. So there is a broader strategy on the international level of deliberately allowing the Congo to continue in a mayhem because it is beneficial for these Western powers to just loot the natural resources of the DRC via proxies. And namely, you hear Rwanda becoming a net export of coltan or gold. And if you ask whether they are a gold mine in Rwanda or coltan mine in Rwanda, they will tell you none. So the context here, to answer directly to your questions, that there is no political will on the part of Western powers. In fact, just recently, France managed to convince the European Union to offer Rwanda 23 million euros to support the government of Rwanda, quote unquote, in the Mozambican operation. But what happened then, those funds end up used by Kigali to supply weapons to the M23 rebels. At the same time, then you have Macron saying that we are going to give Kinshasa 35 million euros to deal with the humanitarian situation rather than calling on Kigali and maybe also taking a drastic step in putting sanctions on Kigali to stop its adventures in the Congo.
It's really the diplomacy of doublespeak, like you said. It's a fine place to go on a break, and we'll continue our conversation from where we left off after this break. Do stay with us. It's Secure the Continent and News Central Television. You're welcome back to Secure the Continent, News Central Television, and we've been discussing the breakdown of another ceasefire between M23 rebels and the Congolese army. And I still have joining me for this discussion, Nixon Katemba, an analyst of Great Lakes and East Africa, is joining from Johannesburg, South Africa, and also Gideon Baleke, an activist and political analyst who's joining us from Toronto in Canada. Now, Gideon, before we went on the break, Nixon did talk about the diplomacy of doublespeak, because that is what exactly it looks like. You are playing both sides, and I wonder what an innocent Congolese caught in this crossfire. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels who've displaced over 1 million people in their long campaign. Independent United Nations experts, the United States, as well as several other Western states, agree with the assessment, although Rwanda strongly denies it. Why are there no consequences for Rwanda? And does President Felix Tshisekedi not think that, does he not realize that it seems to be played by both sides? It's just a pawn in this whole geopolitical mess.
Yeah, that's a great question. But you know what these troops are doing? It's really unfortunate to see that happening. The EAC troops are now somehow supporting the Kigali's regime because they know what is happening. They know what is happening properly in the region. You know, we should take into consideration the fact that the Kenyan Defense Forces, the UPDF, Ugandan Defense People's Forces, and the RDF are on their own in a strategic defense pact. And that defense pact says that an attack against one of those countries equals to an attack against all of them. And then you bring the Kenyan forces in the DRC, you bring the Ugandan forces in the DRC, and then you expect them to fight the M23. And the M23, that is a terrorist organization created as a proxy by the RDF, the Rwandese Defense Forces. When they are on the ground, what do they see? They see the RDF. How do you want them to fight people they're in a strategic pact with?
So there's a conflict of interest.
There is a paradox there. There is a paradox. And that's why Kinshasa is is playing a major part within this conflict, because all the decisions they are taking are the decisions against our republic, against the protection of the civilians, against the protection of the Congolese who've been facing all this brutal war imposed on them for nothing within the last 25 years. So we have these politicians who are as well part of this conflict. And we have the international community as well.
Okay.
So everybody is against the people there. Everybody is against the people who are on the ground. And it's really unfortunate. All they are doing is to play politics. And we are tired.
Not a pretty situation.
Know that we are tired.
Not a pretty situation, if you ask me. Now, Nixon, that is why some Congolese did protest before President Emmanuel Macron actually touched down in Kinshasa. There were already protests that we don't want you, you're a hypocrite. President Felix Tshisekedi recently urged French President Emmanuel Macron during a recent visit to Kinshasa to pursue international sanctions against Rwanda for its alleged military support to M23 rebels. President Macron says he would wait for the end of several peace negotiations efforts before considering such a step. What's your take on this?
Don't think President Macron will allow such to happen and impose a sanction on Rwanda. You'd recall that Rwanda is building France's interest in Mozambique
Cabo Delgado.
by protecting French's interest, particularly with Total's 4 million investment in the natural gas in Mozambique and Cabo Delgado. Rwanda, at the same time, is helping keeping tab on the Russian in the Central African Republic, where France was booted by the government of Archange Touadéra there, but also the Total having, and as well as ELF, having a problem with the Central African Republic there. In the same vein, Rwanda has just concluded on December 25th last year, concluded an agreement with the government of Benin and Patrice Talon to supply to kind of a dispersed practice that will assist Benin to fight quote-unquote terrorists which have been running amok in the Sahel region. But in
so make this clear to me, Nixon. A country in West Africa that is geographically located in West Africa signing a peace pact with Rwanda all the way in the Great Lakes region. How does this make sense?
That is a defense pact on saying that the Rwanda is going to send military personnel. In fact, they have already sent about 350 soldiers who are on the Benin soil under that agreement, and more is to happen. And this is by the facilitation of France, and France wanting Rwanda to replace the Operation Barkhane that has been running in West Africa. And I have to say this so that those who are watching you in West Africa are aware of what Rwanda is doing as a new clientele state that France is using to run the show on the African continent under the pretext that they are signing the first pact for the security of the continent and fighting terrorism. In real sense, Rwanda
so it's almost like you're using your national army as a mercenary group. That's what it seems like.
That's what Paul Kagame is doing in many instances with this defense pact. So similar pacts have been signed by Congo with Congo Brazzaville and many others on the instruction of France. So you don't expect Emmanuel Macron to come out in Kinshasa and then come out clearly to condemn their proxies that are assisting them in securing many of their interests on the African continent. And this comes in a wake of much anti-France sentiment, mainly in the former French colony in West Africa, in Guinea-Conakry, in Burkina Faso, as well as in Mali. And Niger was coming up as the same as well as Chad. You remember the famous speech by Idriss Déby before his death in Paris, saying that he was not going to allow Chad to become a cannon folder for French interest. in the Sahel region. And eventually Idriss Déby was killed. So you have to look at what a French interest in the broader game and its current support for Rwanda and why it refused to condemn Rwanda for Rwanda's aggression in the DRC.
Thank you, Nixon. Now, Gideon, looking at solutions to the ongoing problems and crisis in the Eastern DRC, that is not a victimless crime. There are so many victims that are caught up in this mess. Now, United Nations Security Council delegation arrived in the DRC on Thursday for a 3-day visit. The world body said that the delegation was due to meet President Felix Tshisekedi before traveling to Goma on Saturday. What are your thoughts on this visit, and are you optimistic that it will bring about succor to the long-suffering people in the Eastern DRC? Can you kindly unmute your mic, please? Gideon.
Sorry. There's no diplomatic visits that can bring peace to the current DRC's affair. There is no foreign military power. There is no foreign forces that will be able to bring peace currently in the DRC. We have strong military forces, the FRDC, but we have bad leaders who are leading them, or bad commanders who are leading them, because a soldier is meant to receive orders and to execute those orders. When a soldier receives bad orders, he will be misled, and his results will be chaotic on the ground. The biggest problem of our country right now, it has been one thing. All our enemies are playing realpolitik, and we are playing soft. We should adopt realpolitik as a model of governance in our country. And the only way to do that is to have a strong leadership who understands the situation of the world, who understands geopolitics, who understands the geostrategy of the world, someone who understands where the world is heading, and someone who understands the potential the DRC is. Because if we remain soft, no one will come and save us. We have to adopt realpolitik, because that's the game other countries are using. No foreign emissary, no foreign diplomats will come and bring peace to the DRC. It's up to ourselves. And the Congolese young people whose life has been failed, those are the ones who are supposed to serve the country. They should find strategic way, because we are in front of a vicious cycle that has been just turning around, and all the same things are keep on repeating themselves, and we are not moving forward. We are a shame to the African continent, and we have to change that. Okay. We have to change that. And it's up to the young Congolese people to redefine the future of that country. The country is in danger more than ever. It's a playground of international forces, regional forces, and all the proxy forces right now. And things will be worse if we don't stand up and open our eyes and fight for our own country. Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. Now, let's talk about the humanitarian situation in the eastern DRC. Nixon, what are some of the consequences of this conflict that's been raging for quite some time now? And how are humanitarian organizations responding to the crisis?
That let me make it clear that the war in the DRC is taking a different turn altogether. If you listen to a statement from the likes of James Kabarebe, who is the security advisor to the Rwandan president, saying that this war is going to take long and it is a war of liberation of the Tutsis in the Congo. You have the likes of Gatete Ruhumuriza, whom you have had on this program before, saying that they have to be a second Berlin Conference to redetermine the territories of Eastern Congo.
So are they thinking towards a sort of balkanization of the DRC?
So basically, that's where the Rwandan and the M23 is going. And unfortunately, whenever we have discussions of this nature, we don't bring that aspect into it. We rather focus on humanitarian issues and so on, which are very important, by the way. But we need to look at the broader, how the conflict is unfolding, and the kind of a statement that are coming from both sides in Kinshasa and Kigali, namely Kigali at this point in time. And I'm afraid Kigali is playing a very long game to destabilize the DRC and eventually to balkanize it. That is my sense of and the reading of the situation. And to have to understand it from the context of the history of the wars in the Great Lakes region since 1980s, where the National Resistance Army was formed in Uganda, eventually formed by the same people. Same people get to turn to RPF, coming to RPF, and now you hear RCD, M23, and so on. But the claim has always been the same: by protection of civilian, quote-unquote, Tutsi of ethnic nature. So if you look at the current situation now, in as much as by UN admissions, there have been a killing of civilians, turning to the humanitarian aspect that you asked me about, is that the civilians are severely affected by this war, because the M23 is not only fighting, but it's also engaging in massacring civilians. And unfortunately, this is not coming out in the international press. But you recall the massacre of Kishishe, which in just one day, about 141 people were killed by the M23. No UN investigations, no UN condemnation, all on just a Human Rights Watch report that came out. The UN investigator who were there, they were just saying that indeed we confirmed that these killings happened. But the question is, what is being taken? What steps are being taken by the United Nations in the face of this atrocious act committed by the M23 as the representation of the United Nations Security Council visits the country? And one leave to just one thing, that there is no political will on the part of the United Nations Security Council, including its permanent members who are the major players in the conflict in the DRC, by assisting the likes of Paul Kagame to continue the mayhem in the Great Lakes region.
Quite an unfortunate situation. Now, Gideon, from what we've established today and our analysis of and discussion of what's going on in Eastern DRC, it seems the DR Congo is going to have to look inwards and find solutions to its problems, because it's caught in the middle of a geopolitical chess war. And like you said, it's only Congolese people that will liberate Congo from this external aggression. Now, looking at the opposition in Congo, look, what are they offering? What's their take on everything that is happening? Elections are due this year, and President Tshisekedi will be running against members of the opposition. Perhaps they might have a better solution to the current crisis in the Eastern DRC. What is Jean-Pierre Bemba saying, and Moise Katumbi and other members of the Congolese opposition?
I think the Congo doesn't need oppositions. We need revolutionaries. The country needs a revolution, not opposition leaders, because these opposition leaders, most of them are there just for trade-offs. Playing political games, using the political balls, and playing that cynical political game, because what we call politics currently in the DRC is pure cynicism, a club of oligarchs who prefer to be crooks and who prefer to steal from the country and to plunder, who prefer to be careless, and it's really irritating us. So we don't have the opposition leaders. I don't like that narrative. I prefer revolutionary leaders, because our country has to go through a disruption revolution that will lead the country into other direction. All these opposition leaders trying to maintain the countries in the status quo, in the same system. Today's regime, they were in the opposition for 32 years. And during the 32 years, they participated in many governments. And so it's the same people. It's a group of people who are not performing for the country, who are not delivering. So people are the least priority for them, and they claim to be leaders. So it's so unfortunate. I don't support the opposition narrative. We are revolutionaries because we want a revolution to happen in our country, a disrupted revolution that will lead our country in its destiny of glory and power. The Congo can't be ashamed to the entire world like this. It's so painful, so painful.
Really painful. We continue to observe situations there, and we hope that lasting peace returns to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Gideon Beleke in Toronto, Canada, and also Nixon Katembo in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you very much for joining the program. We do appreciate your insight, your time and contribution to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.